In the last few sessions, we were talking about a relationship between men and women in Judaism, human sexual behavior in Judaism. The abiding principle in both cases is what? What's the word? Chesed, which means kindness, special kind of love, compassion. Right. We talked somewhat about the feminine force in the world and each of us, and how that is currently being suppressed by society, and we try to identify a little more clearly what that feminine force is. And we talked somewhat about marriage, and I went through last week the marriage ceremony. Did I not?
Yes.
Right. So now I'm going to talk about divorce.
I said the walking around 7 times.
You gotta walk backwards 7 times.
Well, Rabbi Don in his book has on page 135 and 136 has like a page and a half on divorce. While there's a lot on almost everything else, the reason being that we don't want to talk about it, and we don't want to really deal with it because it doesn't happen among Jews. Well, maybe when he wrote this, the divorce rate was very low among the Jewish community, and unfortunately, the divorce rate in the Jewish community might be slightly lower than the general community, but not much. And the general community today is, I think. In many cases, 1 out of 3 marriages will certainly end in divorce, and in certain places in California, I understand it's 1 out of 2. So I remember there was a show on LA Law advising everybody before they go into a marriage to have a prenuptial agreement, because the chances are it was like 52-53% divorce rate at that particular time. Chances are that this marriage is not going to last. I mean, to go into a marriage with that kind of attitude is very strange. But there is room in Judaism for prenuptial agreements. As a matter of fact, I would advise and recommend most of the couples that I marry sign a prenuptial agreement. It's not
young ones?
right, especially the young ones. It's not a prenuptial agreement for money, because a prenuptial agreement for money is almost taken care of in the ketubah, the marriage contract, which specifies that in the event that there is divorce or the husband dies, the wife can't be disinherited or thrown in the street with nothing. She has to be properly supported. There is monetary sums mentioned in the ketubah, although they're not mentioned in terms of dollars. They're mentioned in other coinage, but the intent certainly is there, and it is to a degree enforceable in courts. However, the kind of prenuptial that I recommend couples sign before they get married is an agreement specifying that in the event the marriage does not succeed and a divorce is contemplated, that both parties agree that they will cooperate in the issuance of a get, a Jewish divorce. There is even a law in New York State to this effect, called the Get Law, written by Justice Held, which states that neither party in a marriage can interfere with their former spouse's remarriage. It's put in a legalistic fashion in such a way that they both parties must cooperate in the issuance of a get, because that would, if they not, it would be interference.
When do you get the get?
The get should be gotten right after the divorce is decreed, or if one would suspect that a civil divorce not be that if after a civil divorce is forthcoming, that the one of the spouses might disappear, we might advise them to do it right before, while it's pending in court. And certainly, in any divorce proceedings, I advise everyone who's going through a divorce to make sure it's written in the divorce proceedings that they both will cooperate in the issuance of a get. Get is a Jewish divorce. Torah specifies that if a couple's not getting along and they don't like each other and they want to get divorced, there should be room for that. Because if chesed, if the compassionate love is not going to be operative in the home, it's not going to be a loving home, then what's the point? Even if there are children involved, or perhaps especially if there are children involved. It can be very destructive for children to grow up, as we all know, in a home where that loving compassion is absent. And so the Torah says a man will write out a writ of divorce and hand it to his wife, and they're divorced. And this is how the Jewish divorce works. But not every man is a qualified scribe to be able to write a writ of divorce. So what actually happens at a Jewish divorce is you go before a Jewish court, and it's not like a civil court. It's a court of 3 rabbis, and they're not going to try to talk you out of the divorce. Obviously, if you're there at that point and you've already filed for civil divorce, that this is going to be there is going to be a divorce. They're more interested in making sure that a Jewish divorce is properly executed. So there'll be a scribe present, and the husband will appoint the scribe to write the get for him. And really, the skill of the scribe determines how long the proceedings last. If he's very good and very fast, it could last 45 minutes.
Why doesn't the
If he's not very good and not very fast, or maybe he doesn't write it could be very good but not write very fast, it could take about 2 hours, because the writ of divorce has to be written in a certain prescribed manner. If there's one mistake on it, he has to start all over again. If he makes one mistake in one letter, you can't erase it. You got to do it all over again.
But you're talking about he. What about she?
Well, I'll get to that. You'll hear the whole thing. It's a good question, but you'll see. The scribe writes out the writ of divorce, and every spelling of every name has to be properly done. I have a book that's used by people who write divorces for the spellings of Yiddish names, which is so crazy. It could really. That's the biggest problem that I have as a rabbi, mostly technical problem when people come to me with names, or they want to name a baby, or I have to fill their names out on their marriage document, and they say their Yiddish names to me in a certain way, and it's very hard to understand what they have in mind. There was somebody wrote on an application for membership the name of their mother. They were sick, so we needed the mother's name. Whenever you say a prayer for someone who's sick, it's their name, the daughter of the mother. Usually use the father for legalistic things, but it really counts when someone's sick. You use the mother's name. You call out the mama, the feminine side, right? So they wrote on Chiva. Now, how would you say that? Chav, I thought maybe from Chava or something.
Yeah.
Actually, they didn't know how to say it. Chivia, they said. Actually, it was Tzivia. Tzivia, which is a Hebrew name, or Tzvia. And till I actually spoke to them and was able to have them reach back and talk, I wasn't able to figure it out exactly. But in the get has to be spelled specifically. My name is my middle name is Hillel. Hillel is Hey Lamed Lamed. It's the way it's spelled throughout the Talmud. But the legal way of spelling Hillel is Hey Yud Lamed Lamed, and that's the way it appears once, as it's mentioned in the whole Bible. So if you write a get, it has to be done in a prescribed manner. So the scribe will write the get. Then they take the get and they fold it up, and then the wife has to appear. She doesn't have to be there all during this time. She has to appear at the end after the get is written, and she holds out her hand like this, and he takes the get, then he drops it, and he makes a declaration holding it over her hand that he's doing this of his free will, and there's under no compulsion, etc., etc. And he drops it into her hand, and she makes declarations that she's accepting this freely, etc., etc. If she accepts it, and she walks away, assuming that she's got it, to show that she owns it, they're divorced. Now, according to the Torah, a man's allowed to have more than one wife. So he, technically, according to the Torah, doesn't need to have a divorce, a Jewish divorce, in order to remarry. According to the Torah, a woman's not allowed to have more than one husband. If the definition of an illegitimate child is a child born to a married woman where the father is someone else other than the husband. A child born out of wedlock is not considered illegitimate. So, but in the rabbinic law, we decreed, actually Rabbeinu Gershom, somewhere around the 10th century, that for the entire Jewish community, we decreed monogamy as a rabbinic decree. Since most Jews practice monogamy, as I've explained before, although you see cases in the Bible where Abraham had a wife Sarah, but he also had a wife Hagar, but he never wanted Hagar to be his wife. Sarah couldn't have a child, so she gave Abraham her handmaiden Hagar. Abraham only wanted Sarah. Jacob had Rachel and Leah and their handmaidens. He only wanted Rachel. He thought he married Rachel, woke up the next morning, was Leah in the bed with him. And then he married Rachel. And then he married all the handmaidens because he had no control over his sexual life. They would vie for his attentions.
He's tired.
Well, King Solomon had 1,000 wives against the Torah, by the way, and he was punished for that. Torah says a king is only allowed to have 18 wives. Again, one is a main wife. The other wives generally, and especially in the case of King Solomon, were used as measures of alliances. If you marry the daughters of all the kings around you, you ensure peace in your area. That's essentially what King Solomon did, and that's why he had 1,000 wives. I mean, not that he would service his 1,000 wives. It was more of a political thing. And generally, if you look through the entire Bible and look through the Talmud, the sages of the Talmud, you'll be very, very hard pressed. And I don't know of one case of a polygamous marriage among the scholars of the Talmud. So it seems that monogamy generally was the rule. And Rabbeinu Gershom made a decree around the 10th century that Jews should only have monogamous marriages. So according to rabbinic law, a man can't remarry unless he gets a divorce. And rabbinic law is enforced just like Torah law is in Jewish community. So they both have to cooperate. And there have been some very difficult circumstances that I have known about and been involved in, where the husband might say, you want a Jewish divorce because you want to get married? I'll give you a Jewish divorce. Just give me $50,000.
Yeah, but is that as legal?
It's not legal, but you want him to do it. Or you want a Jewish divorce? Sure, give me custody of one of the kids. Or something of that effect. There's always bitterness going on. That's why you want to have it put into the divorce proceedings, the secular divorce proceedings. So according to Jewish law today, both husband and wife must have a get in order to remarry, and both must, the cooperation of both is necessary in order to do it. Now there are certain circumstances that are very difficult. For instance, what if a man has a wife who develops Alzheimer's disease in her 50s? Right? Now he wants to remarry because she gets to a certain stage and she doesn't even recognize him, and he has certain needs and feelings, and why should he not be able to remarry? But he can't properly divorce her because she can't accept it. She doesn't have any wherewithal mentally to accept this divorce decree. So the Jewish law provides for certain circumstances like that. There'll be a court of 100 rabbis issued, a decree of 100 rabbis, which is not easy. I mean, you can't get 2 rabbis to agree on anything, let alone 100. But no, this has been done in this case many times. An issuance of a decree of 100 rabbis.
Wouldn't he, out of decency, take care of the woman later?
We're not talking about, he has to provide for her. That's in the ketubah, that's taking, I'm not talking about that. We're assuming that's the case. Yeah, that's a good point. So I always make it a prenuptial agreement, if possible, for a couple to sign that they will issue a divorce, hoping that they'll never ever need to do it.
Well, that should save it.
Oh, he has more in here, page 292 and 294. We have a new member today. Is that Jeff
I
Ash?
introduced
Are you introduced him? Okay.
him.
You got it under control.
On page 292 is a very nice quote on the top. When one divorces his first wife, even the altar sheds tears. Yeah, it's very painful. It could be like destruction, like a tremendous destruction or a national destruction or destruction of the temple, that sort of thing. He goes through the procedures here of what I just described to you. When the get is completed, the Jewish court issues what's called a patur. You'll find that in the middle of 294. They keep the actual get. And the get is ripped, so it can't be used again, for whatever reason. And a patur is written by the court. Patur means you're permitted, or it's a sign of release that they both can remarry. The woman is not allowed to remarry for 90 days.
In case she's pregnant.
In case she's pregnant. You want to know who the father is, the paternity is, of the child will be. There's a ceremony called chalitza that he describes here, and I should explain it to you. The Torah specifies a law of levirate marriage. If a man dies and leaves a childless wife, his brother is obligated to marry the wife.
Please. Oh, that's a scary thought. I'm sorry.
Very good. And raise his seed for his brother, so that his name will not be erased in Israel. Does he have the language here? Well, he doesn't quote the verses here. He just paraphrases. Anyway, so this was a very important law in days when people had more than one wife, and the wife went to the husband's community, and she was there all alone. And when he would die, she would really have no means of support. This is the way she would be taken in right away. One of the brothers would marry her, and raise seed to the child, raise seed to the brother. Today we don't allow this to be done. Okay? If you take a look in the book of Ruth, this ceremony is performed in the book of Ruth. Ruth is the wife of the son of Naomi, and when she returns with Naomi after her husband dies, like the whole family dies except for Ruth and Naomi, and Ruth's sister who stayed in Moab, she goes back to Judah, and she goes to the home of Boaz, who is a relative, and maybe he will redeem her, so to speak, and marry her. But there is another relative who's closer, so he has to bargain. And they first Boaz goes to the relative, and the other relative refuses to marry her, of course, and he performs the ceremony of chalitza. It's a very strange ceremony. He takes off his shoe, and she spits in it because he won't fulfill his obligation, and something of that effect. Today, in every case like this, we do chalitza.
When you said the other relative was closer, you meant in hierarchy of family versus
Family.
physically.
Family, right. In Hebrew, we call this yibum. See, he says, on moral grounds, the rabbis felt constrained to prevent a levirate marriage from being consummated. They felt that it would be extremely difficult for a man to cohabit with a sister-in-law with only intent of fulfilling the religious duty. Without such singular intent, the relationship would be incestuous. Yeah, if you take the case, for instance, in the Torah of Judah's children, Judah has Er and Onan as children. Er is married to Er is married to Tamar, I believe the way it works, and and Er did something that was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. That's another. It's the whole discussion of what did he do. Onan went into his brother's wife as the Torah law specifies, but he spilled the seed on the ground because he didn't want to give seed to his brother, and then the Lord slew him also. I mean, we discussed a little bit about this in previous classes. The Catholic Church picked up on this and called this onanism. When one masturbates, it's onanism from Onan, spilled the seed on the ground, and since Onan was killed because he spilled the seed on the ground, anybody who masturbates should be killed. So the Catholic Church says onanism is masturbation is worthy of death. And then I brought you a quote from one of my rebbes in yeshiva, who quoted Masterson Johnson, that according to Masterson Johnson, 95% of people at one time in their life have masturbated, and the other 5% are liars. So why would the Torah make such a decree that someone who masturbates is worthy of death? If God made us in a certain natural way, that this is going to happen sometime in your life. So the answer is that no, that's not why Onan was killed, because he spilled the seed on the ground. He was killed why? Because it's a forbidden relationship to marry your brother's wife. It's not allowed according to Torah, the penalty of death. Yeah, if you get divorced, you're not allowed to marry. The only reason they were allowed to marry was to give seed to the brother, but he spilled it on the ground, so what they're left with? They were left with a forbidden relationship. So that's why it was killed. So Tamar says to Judah, look, let me go. Let me go. I mean, I'm a young woman yet. I can still have children. I have a life in front of me. Let me go. Release me. I will marry somebody else. He said, no, I can't release you because I have another son, Sheila. You wait till he grows up, and then he'll marry you. Very patient woman. She waits. He grows up. He marries someone else. She gets very upset. No. She dresses like a harlot and with veils on her face, and she goes out into the fields where she knows that Yehuda would be there at a certain time, Judah would be checking the flocks, and he sees her, and he goes into her tent, and they have relations. And he says to her, I can't pay you because I have nothing with me. I just came to see my flocks. She said, well, I'll take your staff and hold it until you can bring me something. So he comes back the next day, she's gone. Well, he forgets about it. After 3 months or so, it's seen that she's pregnant. Everybody says Tamar is pregnant, and Judah gets really upset, and he wants to kill her and kill whoever did it. And she brings the staff, and she says, "Here." And Judah says, you have to hand it to Judah. He was a big man to do this. He said, "You were more righteous than I. You're more righteous than I." And I apologize, and it was very, very tremendous contrition, and he asked her for forgiveness and that sort of thing. Show you how the levirate marriage worked in Israel. But just as a side, I think it's an important aside, and I've mentioned it before, but I'll probably mention many more times that it really sinks into you. Who did she give birth to? She gave birth to twins. One of them was Peretz. Peretz was the great progenitor of Boaz, the progenitor of whose child through Ruth eventually became David, who was the progenitor of the Messiah. The Jewish Messiah comes, on the one side, from a lineage of this kind of relationship, this forbidden sexual relationship between a father-in-law and a daughter-in-law, right? And on the other side, it comes from Ruth. Ruth married Boaz, and a great-grandson was King David, and on to the Messiah. Ruth was a Moabite, not allowed to marry into the Jewish family because they were very cruel people to the Jewish people. So you have a forbidden relationship with a Moabite on one side, a forbidden relationship with a father-in-law and a daughter-in-law on the other side, and that's going to produce their seed is going to produce the Messiah, as opposed to the Christian Messiah. What is it? Christian Messiah is a result of immaculate conception. Well, just pristine purity, so to speak, right? I mean, I'm not going to go into the merits of immaculate conception because it's very strange to begin with. But my point is, the Jewish society comes from such origins, such you would say lowly origins. How is that possible? And the answer is that we believe in tshuva, in repentance. And it shows that this is really a very, very strong principle in Judaism. No matter what origins you are born into, no matter what fate life has dealt you, you could change your destiny, something I spoke about last night. And you could even become the Messiah, even from such forbidden relationships. You could even become the Messiah. Because we believe in the power of redemption. Personal redemption. Coming just about between your relationship between yourself and God. Okay, so this levirate marriage we don't exercise anymore today, and it was an issue in our generation, especially in World War II, when there were a lot of Jewish boys killed in the war, and a lot of young Jewish widows. And we did the ceremony of Chalitza. Without the ceremony of Chalitza, releasing her, she can't remarry either. Okay. Did I go into what the prohibited marriages? There's a section here about 289. The permitted relationships. Of course, incest is forbidden. Defined as mother, daughter, sister, granddaughter, the sister of one's father or mother. Can't marry. he brings the whole list here. The cases of affinity, the wives of blood relations, the son's wife, the father's wife, the uncle's wife, the brother's wife, the wife of another man, of course. Because if you don't get a Jewish get, a Jewish divorce, you're still considered married, even if you get a legal divorce. And so that such a union will be considered adulterous, and such a child that comes from that union will be illegitimate. A wife's sister during the wife's lifetime, even if the wife had been divorced from him. After the death of a wife or an ex-wife, it is permitted to marry her sister. Yes?
Well, would you put religious, two religions into marriage and that?
Yeah. You're forbidden to marry someone from another religion. Absolutely. And you can't marry a mamzer, an illegitimate child. A Jew is not allowed to marry an illegitimate child. Again, illegitimacy is a child born of one of these forbidden relationships, not of a relationship between a man and a woman who are not married, but one of these forbidden relationships. And
Is there any way around that?
No, but
It's
yes.
not okay. I'll let you finish.
Our rabbis were are very compassionate and try always to find a way out in case we have a mamzer. So I mean, if you have a case where a couple gets divorced, civil divorce, they don't get a Jewish divorce, and they were married by a rabbi, and then she marries someone else, another Jew, or a non-Jew, doesn't really matter at this point. A child that's born is illegitimate. A legitimate Jew is a mamzer. That's very difficult because a mamzer can't marry another Jew. So what we try to do is find some way of making this mamzer kosher and not a mamzer. How? Well, maybe we can find a way of invalidating the first marriage. In order to have a legal marriage, you must have two witnesses who are adult males who are personally religiously observant. They have to see that all the procedures of the marriage are done properly. If not, they invalidate the first marriage. She was never married originally, so it's not considered illegitimate, right? They'll find some ways. I mean, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein may he rest in peace, who died about 6 or 7 years ago, was really the master at this. He was the legal head of the Jewish world, so to speak, because he was the one who people came to with the most difficult questions, and his decrees were very well respected. He would take cases like, I'm just making this one up, but similar cases, it seemed to me, where a husband, the husband and wife got divorced, and the husband ran off to Israel before they can get a get. And he hasn't been back from Israel, and she hasn't left the United States for 10 years. She remarried, had a child. He found a way to make that child kosher. I mean, they bend over backwards to find a way. Sometimes it's not possible, but they do. We do. Bend over backwards to find a way. But the intent, it's not his fault, so why should the Torah put this punishment on the child? The intent actually is on the people who are committing the offense, the adultery, that they should, or the incest, or whatever it is, that they should be very careful, and they should know there are consequences to their actions. Okay, a Kohen is not supposed to marry a divorcee or a convert. Kohen, a priest. And it's a problem today, generally, from time to time, because divorce is so rampant that Kohen himself who gets divorced will meet another divorcee and he can't marry her. Unless there was some problem in the original marriage. And so this is it's a holdover from the status of the priests from Torah times, and it is the hope in Judaism that the priesthood will be reestablished someday when the temple's rebuilt. In what form, we're not generally sure. And then again, when there are some difficult situations like that, we try our best to find a way out. Okay. I spoke about abortion, didn't I? In detail. And I spoke about birth control. Okay. Chapter 8, page 142. Signs of the covenant. Actually, the next few chapters probably will go quickly. In the Shema prayer that we do recites twice a day, we talk about certain action commands. We don't talk about giving charity. We don't talk about love of your fellow man, so to speak. It talks about two mitzvot, action commands that the Jew must do. It's very interesting how these commandments are given. Actually, three action commands. There's the two in the first paragraph. And you shall write them upon, or you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. In other words, you write the commandments of God as a sign upon your hand, and be for frontlets between your eyes. We're talking about tefillin. And the other one is mezuzah. You shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates, the commandments of God. And at the end of the Shema, we talk about tzitzit. You put fringes on the corners of your garments. And interesting that tefillin and tzitzit are very important commandments, a sign of love between God and mankind. But women don't wear them. Why is that? Why is that? Actually, I would think, according to the Torah, if a woman wore a four-cornered garment, she might be required to put on tzitzit. Because that's what the Torah says. If you put on a garment of four corners, you should wear tzitzit.
Yeah, why diapers are 3 corners?
No. Not today's.
No, they're not. They used to be.
No corners.
Today's diapers have actually maybe 4 corners. It doesn't have to be a square garment. And I recently studied the laws of tzitzit in detail in the Shulchan Aruch. You know how you have a suit, with a slit in the back? Sorry, doesn't go. But, if you have a suit and the suit is not rounded in the corners, let's say this is square, like some styles come out, especially double-breasted styles are square here, right? And if I had a slit in the back, well, then I would have 4 corners. So maybe I should walk around with tzitzit on my suit, right? Whenever you have a 4-corner garment, right? But a corner is defined that the slit has to go more than halfway up. Then it makes for a valid corner.
Well, wait a minute, then the tzitzit that they wear now, there's 2 slits on each side because it's only the front and the back. So one garment.
It's 4
there's no
corners.
slits.
4 corners. That's the main thing. But if the slit goes all the way up, has to go more than halfway up. But the corner has to be attached to a part of the garment that goes all the way up into the garment, at least halfway up. I don't have to go into how the Talmud derives that, but I would just I never really understood that until recently.
So what's the answer as to why women don't wear tzitzit?
Right.
I'm sorry.
No,
Getting back to
it's very important. Women are exempt from all commandments that are subject to time. We spoke about many times. They're exempt from all commandments that are subject to time. Mitzvot aseh shehazman grama. For instance, the rabbinic command to pray at specific intervals. You have a shacharit service in the morning, and a mincha service in the afternoon, and a Maariv service in the evening. Some say it's a Torah commandment from our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whatever. How do you define it? It's a commandment to pray at certain times. Women are required to pray every day, but they're not required to say these 3 services that come at specific times. All commandments that are subject to specific times, women are exempt from. This has certain ramifications in terms of prayer. We're going to do a whole unit on prayer soon, probably in August when I get back. And this has ramifications. Since the definition of a minyan are 10 people who are, a quorum of 10 people who are required to pray, or who have the requirement of for the same need that that you have the minyan, then for women cannot be counted in a minyan, in a quorum for men, because they're not obligated to say the morning service, for instance. Well, the men are, so you need 10 people who are obligated. This if you have an onan, a mourner before the funeral, he is exempt from all commandments, who was subject to time also, because he has to get the funeral arrangements made and make sure everything's taken care of. He can't be counted in a minyan either. Women are required to listen to the reading of the Megillah on Purim, so women should be counted in the reading of the Megillah on Purim. If you gathered 10 people together, men and women, 5 men and 5 women, or 8 women and 2 men, or what sort of thing, it should be allowed to have a kosher Megillah reading with a minyan there, because women are required to listen to the reading of Megillah. So it's a matter of requirements. Why are women exempt from commandments that are subject to time? It's something we spoke about many times. For all the commentaries who say that the woman's place is in the home, and the woman needs to be taking care of the kids, and how could she run out to a minyan when she has to be home taking care of the kids, and and on and on. It's very interesting in terms of lifestyle, but it doesn't really hold merit in terms of the legalities of the law. Because there comes a time in a woman's life where she does not take care of kids. And what if she never has kids? And what if she has someone else to take care of her kids? What if they have a men's service and then a woman's service, and then the woman goes to service on Monday, the man will go on Tuesday morning, and he'll stay home with the kids for a little while, or whatever. You can make all kinds of arrangements. The only explanation really that hits home to me is that was given by Rav Soloveitchik, may rest in peace. If you take a look at the order of creation, you see that the lower forms of life were created first and the highest forms last. Woman is the last creation. She's the highest form of life. She's on a higher spiritual plane than any of God's other creations, and therefore she does not need all these extra commands. She doesn't need it for her spiritual elevation. So she's exempt from these commands that are bound by time. Talis, tzitzit, is one of these commandments. Why? It says in there, it says in the end of the Shema, if you take a look at the last paragraph, it talks about tzitzit, putting fringes on the corner of your garment. You should look upon them and remember all the commandments of the Lord.
God knew men's memories.
What?
God knew men's memories.
Right.
You're just singing today, Joe.
And I said I wasn't going to say a word today.
You should look upon them and remember the commandments of the Lord. Looking at the Talmud says is for daytime. That's why you wear talis during the daytime. You don't wear talis at night. The only time we ever wear talis at night is on Yom Kippur night, called Nidre, and we put it on before night. So, looking is for the daytime. meaning it's a commandment that it's subject to time for day and not for night. So women are exempt. But I would say if they wear a four-corner garment, maybe they should put on. It's possible. Can a woman wear a tzitzi, a talis? Is it forbidden? No, it's not forbidden. Except there is a passage in the Torah that talks about cross-dressing. Now, a man's not allowed to walk around in a woman's clothes. Or a woman's not allowed to walk around in men's clothes.
What a man's
You
clothes
can't hardly tell the
nowadays,
difference.
though.
What?
You
Yeah,
can't really
really.
tell the difference these days.
These days you can.
If a man's walking around in a dress with
Yeah,
high
well,
heels,
that's
you know there's something up there, right? There's something up
What
there.
does that mean if a woman walks
But if
around
I'm
in pants?
walking around in
It's men's
pants-
clothes.
Well, this is the argument of many in the on the far right in the Orthodox world for women should not wear pants because it's men's clothes. However, I would tell you, at times in the Talmud, the men wore skirts.
What about the kilt?
Wait, the men wore skirts, free-flowing
Yeah.
skirts, and the women wore pantaloons.
Well, you got kilts.
All right, that's the same thing. So it all depends on the societal norms, really, that are established. What's men's clothing? What's women's clothing? That's really what it depends on, not on Jewish law. You can't say pants is definitely a man's garment, and a skirt is definitely a female garment. But in today's world, you see what's what. Again, today's world is some ambivalence. It's not so simple, right? Now, is a talis a man's garment? Yes, a talis is a man's garment because men wear a talis. However, can you make a talis that's a woman's garment? Maybe you can make a four-corner garment that's really feminine. A man's talis that's normally with black stripes or blue stripes on it, and put pink stripes on it and say this is a woman's talis. Right? I mean, if you've been to some bar mitzvahs in the synagogue recently, you'll see that.
I've seen
You
some
see women
weird
walk in,
towels.
and no one walks up to them and says you can't wear it.
But I've seen men wear weird towels.
Yeah.
Flowers.
But then who's to say what pink and versus green versus yellow?
I mean, there's a guy walked into shul here at a bat mitzvah a few weeks
Flowers.
ago wearing a Flintstone talis.
I've seen a Bart Simpson kippah too.
Yeah, but the whole talis was Flintstones, whatever, and then he put
What was
tzitzis on.
pink flowers all
That
over?
is
It may be kosher, but the intent might be a little off kilter.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to be a judge on that.
Remember the family?
Nobody told him to take it off.
No. Tefillin. Tefillin, according to the sages, they learn out that tefillin is worn on weekdays, but it's not worn on Sabbath or holidays. So therefore, it's bound by time. Women are not exempt from wearing tefillin. The Talmud says that Bruri, I think, a famous woman in the Talmud who was a great sage in her own right, used to put on tefillin every day. She wasn't obligated, but she did it. Can you do it? Yes, you can do these things. The question you have to ask yourselves, do you feel a need to do it because you want to draw closer to God? Or do you feel a need to do it because you want to prove that you can do it? That really has to be, for every woman who contemplates this, the fundamental question. Now, let me talk about the talit and then talk about tefillin. The talit is sort of a reminder. The knot that binds, Tie a knot around your finger so you don't forget. Right? Knots are very important in helping us remember. And the knots are in the windings, in the way, it's almost like a computer memory chip, so to speak. And they're memories that are built in to the knots and the windings. codes are very, very important. I'll give you some idea of what's going on here. Did I make that? I'm running out of trouble. Seat. How do you make it solid? I think that's it. Seat. Okay. Seat. Tzadik in Hebrew is 90. Yud in Hebrew is 10. You know, there's a numerical order of the letters. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, etc. Then you get to 10, which is Yud. Kaf is the next letter and goes to 20. And Lam is the next letter, goes to 30. And Tzadik is 90. So this is 90. This is 10. And Taf, when you get to Tzadik 90, the next letter is Kuf, which is 100. And the next letter, Reish, is 200. Shin is 300. And Torah ends with Taf, the alphabet ends with Taf, which is 400, which is a lecture in itself. Why did we end with 400? Why did we end with 1,000? Why did we end with 500? You know, something more tangible. Why 400? It has to do with the evil eye, but that's a subject for another time. 400 is the numerical equivalent of evil eye. So here you have a total of, great mathematicians, 600, right?
Where's 13 more?
What?
Where's 13?
Well, we know what the magic number in Judaism is, 613, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now if you count on the tzitzit, the strands, you count 8 strands, right?
And each have 5.
And there are 5 knots.
Okay.
So that's 613 commandments. So what the Torah says, you should look upon the tzitzit and remember all the commandments of the Lord. So you had to have some sort of memory device in there, right? There's more to it. Just there's more built in. Simple. There's more memory built in. How many windings do you have? Well, you see that you make a double knot, and then you wind it around, and you make a double knot. You wind it around a few times, make a double knot. How many windings do you have? I think this is the order. 7, double knot, 8, double knot, 11, double knot, 13, double knot. Well, what's this got to do with anything? Right? It has to do with the phrase in Hebrew
39.
that Hashem Echad, that God is one. Remember the oneness of God. How do we get to that? God's name. Can't write really. I'm not allowed to write it. Yud Hey Vav Hey. Yud is 10. Hey is 5. Vav is 6. And Hey is 5. God is a 26. That's a magic number you should always remember. Right? God is a 20. You still see that? I mean, it's hard to see. And one in Hebrew, Echad, Aleph, of course, is the first letter. 1, Chet is the 8th letter, and Dalet is the 4th letter. And that is, how much? 13. 13 and 26 is 39, right? How much is this?
39.
39, good, I'm glad. I'm real glad. So, when you look at the tzitzit, there is more to it. There's much more to it. You should remember that God is one, and feel the presence when you're surrounded by the talit and the tzitzit on it. Feel the presence of God with you. Why do we wear tzitzit? It's become customary for men to wear tzitzit under their clothes. Little small talis on their clothes. Let's see. Am I wearing it today? Yeah. Can you see? wear it under your clothes. And I got a little extra knot there. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 8 strands here. 4 on this side and 4 on that side. Okay. See, 2 come in the front and 2 come in the back, right? Well, if you have 2 in the front, what do you have? You have the five knots and the 5 knots, or 10. 10 represents 10 commandments. You have 10 commandments in front of you, 10 commandments in back of you. So you should, wherever you go in life, you should remember the 10 commandments and live by them. 10 commandments, if you were here at my Shavuot lecture, are symbolic of all of the commandments. Again, tzitzit have programmed into it all of the commandments as well. Why do we have 10 fingers? The Talmud says.
So we can
Yeah.
To
remember.
remind us of the 10
Ten
commandments, which are symbolic of all the commandments. Have it in front of us all the time. To be surrounded with that feeling of holiness as much as possible. Where'd that come from? That's wonderful.
The teacher in you.
It
Okay.
never goes away.
It's in the
How
vein.
can they get me one of those?
They're very useful.
Yeah. Okay.
But will you have it with you when you need it?
No,
Does the Talmud say the same thing for the 10 toes?
yeah, I would say so from the top and the bottom. Yeah. And so you always have the 10 in the CT. You have 10 here and 10 there. You're surrounded by it. There's a story. I want to make sure I get it correctly. Also, I'll just try to tell it in generalities. The Talmud brings a story of a man who was a great scholar in the yeshiva. But he was a very passionate man and very prone to go astray after his own passions. And he worked very hard in yeshiva to develop his personality, and as his level of knowledge increased, he was able to control his passions. Then he heard talk about this. There was this one call girl. I wouldn't even call her a prostitute because she was very, very highly recommended, and she was in a class by herself, and people talked about her as being not just the best, but the most beautiful and the most expensive. And he was a very wealthy man, apparently could afford it, and he made these arrangements. Couldn't resist. Had to find out, have the most beautiful, the most precious, the most important. And the Talmud tells the story about how he went to her, and he had to go through all kinds of chambers to get to her, and she had herself all decked out on this magnificent bed and things all around, and because he paid her the money, and then she started to undress and appear before him, and she was the most magnificent woman that he had ever seen ever in his entire life. And then she started to undress him, and then he looked down and he saw his tzitzit that he was wearing. And he stopped. He just couldn't do it. Remembered the commandments of God that are before him, and he couldn't do it. And he ran away. She was highly insulted. She had a reputation, after all, to be. And here she was, all decked out for this guy, and he ran away. What would people think if they found out? And she was going to find out what it was that made him run. And he had explained to her about the tzitzit and the talis, and they just couldn't do it. She went to his yeshiva, and she sought out the Rebbe there, the chief rabbi, and she wanted to talk to him. And after talking with him about what happened, she decided she was going to convert to Judaism. Because a religion that could have that power and that strength over a man at a time like that ought to be something very special indeed.
But in this day and age, it doesn't work. How many
So-
how many men who want to play around will stop right in the middle because they gotta wear it?
Talk to me about men who are wearing tzitzit. How many
Yeah.
men are wearing tzitzit are playing around?
Oh, I don't know who's playing around, period.
Okay. Okay. Just to give you an idea of the power of these symbols. You had a question? No.
No.
I was
Tefillin?
gonna ask if he ended up marrying her after she converted, but that.
You know the story.
See, I tried. I really
I was
tried.
thinking the same thing.
The end result, that's what
You see, she admired not only religion, but the man who could walk away from her.
That's what you wanted.
Because of it. The character of the man.
Oh, we don't know why she was wearing the seasick. Though, do we?
He.
I mean, the lady.
She wasn't wearing it, he was wearing
He
it.
was wearing it.
When she began to
when he
undress
looked
him, when he
down-
began to dress.
Okay.
For
Okay.
his own.
Tefillin has a very intimate relationship because a man wears it very close to him, and he wears it in the place of his arm that past the point towards his heart, and on his head. In the tefillin, those are leather boxes. In them are scrolls, just like a Torah scroll, made with parchment and written in the same kind of lettering. And the tefillin are written 4 different scrolls on the top and 1 on the bottom, tiny little scrolls of the passages of the Torah that talks about tefillin. And I can tell you that when I wear my tefillin and I put them on every morning, I feel energized afterwards. One is very sensitive to that. It's almost like I describe it to myself. If you take a piece of steel and a magnet, and you rub the piece of steel over the magnet, or the piece of steel comes in contact with the magnet a lot, eventually the electrons become realigned in the magnet, and the piece of steel, and the piece of steel becomes a magnet also, and it'll pick up little things. I think tefillin executes a sort of a realignment within you. It has that power, that feel to it. After you put it on, and you just, if you're just sensitive to it, you could feel that there's something going on there. And tefillin is wrapped around your arm. It's wrapped. Can't be anything between you and the tefillin. You have to take off your watch. You roll up your sleeve from clothes, and it's a strong attachment, a binding, so to speak. And again, what is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be an oath, a sign, a symbol of the commandments. Look upon them and remember the commandments of the Lord is for a talis, and this will be a sign upon your hand and in between your eyes. Wrap it 7 times. 7 times. 7 is a magic number. 7 days of the week. Or some of the other 7s. 7 years you let your
7 times 7, Shavuot.
Shavuot, 7 times 7. We have the sabbatical year every 7 years.
7
Seven's it.
The 7 times 7 is 49. About what is it? The farm or
The Jubilee year.
Jubilee.
The world walks around 7 times. 7 is a number of completion, and have that sense of completion. The knot on the back of the head is supposed to be a dalid. You make a shin on your hand with the windings. Shin dalid, and the knot on the arm piece is a yud. Shin dalid yud spells God's name, right? Almighty. And so when one has these holy scrolls, if you drop tefillin, it's the same penalty as dropping Torah. You have to fast for 40 days. Or to give to charity, what do you think it would be worth to fast 40 days? How did one fast 40 days and survive? You can eat at night. But it's a 40-day fast. We have no. Most fasts in Judaism are just days, not nights. Only 2 fasts during the year. There's many fasts in the Jewish calendar, but only 2 fasts are 24 hours, actually 25 hours. Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. All the rest are just during the day. You can see pictures of it all here. Let's take a look at it. Mezuzah. You shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. Well, probably end with this today. We are to be surrounded by holiness. So the woman who doesn't need to put on a tallis or tefillin, and then doesn't need to have that sense of holiness because she herself is an embodiment of that holiness, nevertheless needs, as we all do, on the physical structures that we have, like in our homes, to have them as you should write the commandments in it. So what's in it is the commandment from mezuzah, from the Shema, the first two paragraphs of the Shema Yisrael. On the scroll is a shin, standing also for God's name, Shah, Dai, and which means Almighty God, or various other kinds of translations. According to Maimonides, those who look upon a mezuzah as an amulet or lucky charm or or for the household are ignorant. In World War II, there were I don't know how many Jewish soldiers, but they produced 3 or 4 times as many mezuzahs in the Jewish community to give out to soldiers as there were Jewish soldiers, and they were all gone like that. And whoever got a hold of them put it around their neck and held them. You see people wearing mezuzahs around their neck, and whoever looks upon them as Maimonides says, as a amulet or lucky charm, are ignorant. Those fools not only fail to fulfill the mitzvah itself, but they have taken a great mitzvah, which involves the oneness of God, and the reminder to love Him and worship Him, and treat it as though it were an amulet designed to benefit them personally. From time immemorial, the mezuzah has marked the Jewish home, made it identifiable as a residence where Jews live. But for the Jew himself, it should serve as a reminder upon entering or leaving his household of the divine presence and God's unity. And it is our duty to live by God's laws.
Where mezuzahs?
Yeah, mezuzah shouldn't. If you wear a mezuzah, it should not have a kosher scroll inside. Because if you do, you're not allowed to go into the bathroom with it. Because you bring Torah into the bathroom, it's not fitting. So if you have what looks like a mezuzah and you're wearing it, make sure you do not have a holy scroll inside. And the mezuzah is put on a door, 1/3 of the way down from the top, on the right side, pointing towards the room as you enter. Okay? Pointing in towards the room, slanted in. Thank you. There are many stories about mezuzahs. I just have to tell you a few of them. First of all, mezuzahs should be placed on every door of the house, except you don't need to place it on a bathroom for obvious reasons. It doesn't have to be placed in most closets. They're not really rooms. And mezuzahs aren't cheap. If you get a kosher mezuzah scroll, if you pay less than $25, $26 for the scroll, it's probably not kosher.
Unless you're in Israel. You can get them for $20 in Israel.
Unless you're in Israel. You were just there, so you know.
Yeah. Because I bought a kosher scroll.
Make a list and bring them back.
Yeah.
We
Right.
all want one.
Because there was a time when scribes would work for next to nothing. Now scribes want to be able to eat and feed their families as well. That's why a decent pair of tefillin today is $500. And if you buy a pair of tefillin for less than $150, you can also be assured that it's probably not kosher. So it could be a big expense. Putting mezuzahs on all the doorposts. If you have 10 doorposts in your house and between the scroll and the box. It's you're paying $35 a piece. You know, it's $350 to outfit a house. It's a lot of
But
money.
it's a lifetime.
But yeah, mezuzahs have to be checked every 7 years at least. Make sure there's no if there's one crack in one letter, the scroll's no good. So you have to be careful. And I'll tell you stories about that in a minute.
Next Sunday.
No, I'm going to finish up quickly. The front door of your house minimally should have a mezuzah. Your bedroom should have a mezuzah. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, who passed away, I understand, yesterday, may he rest in peace. Schneerson, a great, great man, was very big on mezuzahs. He would tell people who came to him who had heart problems, go check your mezuzah, and invariably you find a mezuzah in their bedroom, a cracked lamed and a cracked bet, which spelled Eid, which means heart. Something like that. All happened very often. Just tell you one story, I'll end with this. Someone in my family I personally know was in a very difficult strait. Husband lost his job, went into a business venture, and somebody ran away with all his money. He himself started having heart palpitations and very difficult heart problems. One of the sons was colic and had a hole in his trachea, that sort of thing. Difficult. The wife was in an elevator and the cable snapped, and then she developed spinal meningitis later, and all kinds of problems. I went with the family and we replaced all the mezuzahs in the house. Every one, wasn't cheap. At that time, we were going back about 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago. Placed all the mezuzahs in the house. It was about $250 then. The next year, everybody was healthy. He had a new job. They bought $750,000 home, had 2 new cars, and everybody was doing very well. Coincidence? I have many stories like that. The purpose of the mezuzah is for you to remember commandments of God when you walk in and out. To create a sense of holiness about the house. There's a story in the Talmud of a great sage who was the chief rabbi of Israel, and the Roman emperor sent him a golden sword, and he in turn sent the emperor a mezuzah. The emperor was insulted when he received this piece of paper, and he called for him. And after many long distance to travel, the rabbi appeared before the emperor, and the emperor said, "How dare you insult me? I sent you a golden sword, and you sent me this piece of paper, a piece of parchment." He said to the emperor, "This sword that you sent me, this golden sword, I had to appoint 2 guards to watch it. This little scroll that I sent you, it will guard you." This is very significant. Have a Jewish home, you need to have mezuzahs on. Continue next week.